But we already have another match ready, Joe.
I'm just heartbroken because I thought I was Adam's favorite, but it is what it is. I can't compete with Aaron Traylor.
I would not try to compete with Aaron Traylor either. That man is absolutely a gem. However, we have another match with two incredible players already pretty much queued up for you guys. We'll be bringing from player who we already kind of saw a couple of weeks ago in Angel Miranda, and he will be playing Carson Confer.
Yeah, Carson, former international champion, as well as one of the best players in North America, with our first Dondozo team of the weekend in Orlando. Or how is it actually listed in the page?
Orlandozo was his team name.
Yes, Orlandozo Carson is running through. And Angel Miranda, one of the best players in New York, both a trading card and video game player with a lot of Paradox Pokemon on his team. Typically known, as Aaron was talking about, with his Trick Room strategies and some of his more supportive Pokemon, like I expect to see Mousehold, as it's like kind of the pseudo Clefairy that we have in this format, but Angel doesn't have it. Instead, with Fluttermane and Gothitelle, this time around, that's two Gothitelles in a row, so I wonder if that is a meta development that people were expecting for Orlando here, because I hadn't really been playing against a lot of Gothitelles online, but it seems to be a lot more prevalent in the field right now, the Gothitelle Fluttermane pair.
Yeah, honestly, I think that might be an interesting point, because I was kind of in the same boat. However, unlike last game, Angel is running Perish Song, so things could be a little bit nicer if you get that Dondozo in, and Dondozo cannot switch because it has its buddy Tatsugiri with him on the field.
Yeah, that is one of the hard parts about a Dondozo team, is once you activate Commander with Tatsugiri and get all those stat boosts, sure, you're really strong, but you're not able to switch the field like you were mentioning. So you have your options each turn are a lot less versatile than what your opponent can do, as you only can click for Dondozo. You only can click for, one of his 4 attacks in that moment, where your opponent has up to 8 moves that they can try to go for. So what I think is really interesting is, what does Carson have besides the Dondozo Tatsugiri combination, because that's really what the reason teams win most of the time is not just Dondozo Tatsugiri, right? There has to be something else in the team. And one of the things that's standing out to me is Meowscarada, a very prevalent Pokemon. Depending on if you want Overgrow with Focus Sash, you can have stronger grass attacks from your low HP, or like the Choice Band variant we have here on Carson's side, having Protean there, which lets you get the same type of attack bonus on whichever first attack you choose when Meowscarada is on the field, gives you stronger attacks across the board. So I'd really like to see if you can break through with Meowscarada, like a Choice Banded knockoff, into that Gothitelle slot, which would be super effective there, if that's one way to get around Paris Trap.
I think something that's really interesting too between these two teams, one of them looks almost identical to the teams that we saw just a couple of weeks ago. Carson only bringing 1 Paradox Pokemon, whereas Angel has a team that I think is very much kind of meta developed within the past few weeks with that series too. And I think really adding that Fluttermane, I'm wondering if that is a team that more familiar with, that he played throughout the first few weeks of the season by having 5 of his 6 Pokemon be available for a while. However, we are seeing 2 Paradox Pokemon right out of the gate, and another one on the opposite side, the Iron Bundle and the Fluttermane versus the Fluttermane and Meowscarada.
And I'm instantly jealous, because the only shiny Paradox Pokemon I have so far is Iron Hands. I worked really hard, made a sandwich, got him there, and Angel's showing up with 2 here in Bundle and Fluttermane. 2 of the fastest Pokemon in the format, but of course Carson has access to his own Fluttermane on his side, so this could potentially be a speed tie depending on how they're trained. On Carson's end, that is showing that it's Terra Steel on Fluttermane. Many other times you can see Terra Fairy for a boost to that same type of attack bonus Fairy typing, or even Fairy Ghost on like for Angel, because you want to be a Ghost type, so you're immune to the traps like that. The Shadow tags as a Ghost type, you can stay immune. If you switch to Fairy, you would no longer be immune to it. But these are 4 really fast Pokemon on the field, and that's why Meowscarada is just trying to break through the speed tiers with Sucker Punch.
Yeah, that Sucker Punch does over 50% of the damage to the Iron Bundle, who then goes for an Icy Wind, is going to slow both of these Pokemon down and allow for his own Fluttermane to be faster into both of these Pokemon. And there is no Terra here. This Moonblast is going to do super effective damage, is enough to knock that Meowscarada out. So you have to hope that that Sucker Punch was worth it for that only being the move you get off at this first turn. Flutter Mane on the opposite side going for a Shadow Ball into the other Flutter Mane. Super effective damage is not enough to knock out, but that Flutter Mane over there is holding a Focus Sash, so you knew you needed 2 hits anyway.
Yeah, and the thing is with Flutter Mane, even though it had the Focus Sash, it is not very bulky, but however, special defensively, it can actually take a hit or 2. Now that Dondozo is on the field, you do have to worry about the mind games of switching Tatsugiri in at any point for Carson. So is Angel going to be really nervous about that? Or because sometimes if you try to target the Flutter Mane as an example, and Tatsugiri switches in and jumps into Dondozo's mouth, then you actually miss the attack there. So a lot of times it's actually safer to target the Dondozo slot regardless if you're expecting a switch. And of course, Dondozo is the big threat as well. That speed will make it though, thanks to the IC1 drop from the last time. That Flutter Mane would have been faster, but Angel is actually deciding to switch it out.
Yeah, Angel switching out his Perish Song user right in that Flutter Mane, bringing in the Arcanine, giving him access to an Intimidate, which is a great way to already kind of put some pressure onto this Dondozo as well. Protect from that Iron Bundle, not trying to get knocked out this turn, knowing it can do some really strong damage and be pretty quick. Flutter Mane though, on Carson's side, also going for that Protect this turn, leaving this Dondozo to be the only Pokemon moving with an Earthquake, which is going to do super effective damage into this Arcanine, but is not going to get the knockout on that pesky Iron Bundle on the opposite side of the field. So I think at this point, right, it's a really nice call onto that Arcanine. You still do honestly a pretty decent chunk even with that Intimidate.
Yeah, considering you are intimidated, you can say that's a nice amount. That was a pretty safe play from Carson though, because Flutter Mane was so low on Angel's side that if you just protect your teammate there, you can try to get a cheeky little KO, because there was a lot of pressure from Angel's end since his 2 Pokemon were faster than Carson's, so that could have been a really smart play from Carson there to knock it out. But Angel does not fall for that trick, switching it out, and unless Dondozo gets his buddy Tatsugiri to help it out, this Intimidate is going to hurt its damage output. But with that switch, it's time to get big.
It is time to get all of those boosts. Tatsugiri's commander is going to activate. You can also see as well that this Tatsugiri is going to help improve the speed of this Dondozo, which may not be great in front of an Intimidate user, but instead it's still going to get all of those stat boosts. At this point, it is only going to have +1 into that attack thanks to the Intimidate. Freeze Dry, though, is going to do a good amount of damage for all of those boosts. Order up from the Dondozo should be enough to take out this Iron Bundle, and you're going to get another speed boost as well. So I think at this point, right, this Arcanine may need to try and get some big damage off, or at least find a way to, to stop some of this threat. But a Flare Blitz miss actually targeted into the Tatsugiri there.
Yeah, that is the unfortunate interaction with how Tatsugiri and Dondozo operate, where other times if you were to let's say traditionally knock out a Pokemon and then you were targeting that original slot, it would just get swapped over to the other spot. But because of Tatsugiri's interaction with Dondozo, it doesn't work out that way, and Angel gets punished for it. It still has his Dondozo with just +1. It doesn't matter because now he's +3 speed on the Dondozo for Carson there, so you can be even stronger with access to either Earthquake for Arcanine or a Wave Crash as well into the Arcanine slot there. This Arcanine does feel really threatened. You might want to try to switch it out again if you're Angel, just to intimidate it down one more time and bring it back to a neutral attack stat, and that's exactly what Angel's going for.
Yeah, absolutely. It is going to be sending out a different Pokemon here, going to be that Amoonguss, which is a great way to maybe try and stop this Dondozo from doing some damage. Protect from the Flutter Mane means it's not going to be taking this damage from this Earthquake. It is going to allow possibly for you to go for something like a Spore maybe, and then you can have that Perish Song active instead of taking that knockout, but you would have taken a knockout this turn had you not protected. Still a good chunk of damage as well from that Earthquake onto the Amoonguss.
And what is interesting to note on this Dondozo specifically is that it is Terra Dragon, and every Dondozo matchup changes drastically depending on the Terra typing. If you're Steel or Grass or Water or Flying, for example, if you were Flying Terra Dondozo with Terra Blast, it'd be a lot easier to target down this Amoonguss, but it actually makes it a little more difficult for Carson to decide who his Terra, who he should use his terrestrialization on in each game in this matchup, because you don't have that flying to hit it. And this lets Angel redirect any attacks that would be going towards the Flutter Mane if they were single target into the Amoonguss slot.
Dondozo goes for a substitute here, is going to bring it to just under half of its HP, but a Moonblast firing right on into it is still going to do some pretty good damage, I think. It doesn't do enough. It does do enough to actually fade that substitute, which is an absolutely huge play at the moment. Spore from this Amoonguss is enough, and it does put this Dondozo to sleep. Dondozo at this point has at least one turn of guaranteed sleep that that Angel can take to use to their advantage.
Angel had really pinned Carson into a very unfortunate position, because you either try to target the Flutter Mane and it gets redirected and you can get or if he doesn't use Rage Powder, you can get spored. But that double target, the hit of Moonblast into Spore, knowing you'd break the substitute, was huge.
Yeah, another Moonblast here into that Dondozo does a really nice amount of damage, plus you go for that side Pollen Puff into your Flutter Mane. It was at such low HP, this side Pollen Puff brings it well back up to over half. If you bring in your Arcanine, you can get another Intimidate down and really mitigate the damage.
That's exactly what I was thinking. Not only were you unable to knock out Flutter Mane the last time around, but it's even healthier now, and anytime Arcanine switches onto the battlefield, you're going to be doing even less damage with Dondozo. So this is those situations that Dondozo players really do not like being in, because your options, as we mentioned, are a lot simpler than what your opponent can do every turn. You only have one Pokemon on the field with just Dondozo's 4 moves, compared to Angel switching around Amoonguss and, you know, protecting on Flutter Mane, and now switching Arcanine back in for yet another Intimidate. It's a lot more versatile of a strategy than Dondozo Tatsugiri can be.
Yeah, it is an incredibly positional gameplay there from Angel on his side. Another Intimidate, Dondozo stays asleep, means that you can go for another Moonblast here. It is not enough to get that knockout actually, but you are in extreme speed range.
Yeah, 9 HP, just barely hanging on there, and Arcanine is definitely able to do, even through the speed, or the defense boost there, would be able to knock it out. That Spore was actually just a huge play from Angel, not going for Rage Powder to try to redirect away, because he could have went for Earthquake as well, so if you called Rage Powder and Earthquake hit the entire field, it wouldn't have mattered. So the safer play was to hope that Flutter Mane would be able to not get targeted there, and then you could bring it down and use your Spore there to put it to sleep. So I just think Angel was really playing this matchup. This is not his first rodeo against the Dondozo team, let's be real.
Yeah, Dondozo waking up, going for an Earthquake this turn is still going to do some nice damage. Amoonguss came back in, though, with that Regenerator, was able to heal up. You were not enough to get that knockout on the Flutter Mane. Flutter Mane can go for that Moonblast, take the knockout on that Dondozo, bringing this Tatsugiri, that stretchy form Tatsugiri, back out onto the field. It has that Focus Sash, so it is going to take 2 attacks, but by bringing Amoonguss back in, you may be able to get a Spore off before either of these 2 Pokemon can do enough damage. Yeah,
and the Tatsugiri does have Focus Sash, but it is really in a spot that it feels like if you want to try to target again the Muddy Water, you have to hit, and if you want to go for a single target for accuracy, it can get Rage Powdered away from the Amoonguss there. So Carson did not terrestrialize before on the Dondozo, and that's because he was saving it for Steel Flutter Mane.
Yeah, that Steel Flutter Mane that you talked about a little bit earlier, he was debating going for this Terra turn 1. Really nice to see that he held on to it, though. Rage Powder from the Amoonguss is going to draw the attention away from its partner Pokemon Flutter Mane. The Flutter Mane on Carson's side, going for that Shadow Ball into the Amoonguss, does take that pretty handedly, meaning at this point, too, Amoonguss can eat its berry, gain back some of that HP. If it really wants to switch around again, it can get more HP back with that Regenerator. The Moonblast from the Flutter Mane into the Tatsugiri does enough to bring it down to its Focus Sash here, is at least hanging on at 1 HP. Does have the opportunity to go for a Muddy Water, instead goes for a Taunt into the Amoonguss, who is no longer going to be able to put something to sleep or Rage Powder these attacks away.
So the Taunt onto Amoonguss, instead of trying to risk the either Muddy Water to hit both targets or even Draco Meteor, which is 90% accurate there, is going to make it so that Amoonguss is essentially not relevant on the field right now. And while it is here for these next 3 turns and being taunted, can't go for Rage Powder, can't go for Spore or Protect or anything. Its only attack is Pollen Puff there. And now Flutter Mane is just a sitting duck for Carson's Flutter Mane.
Yeah, and that Pollen Puff is not going to be able to do enough damage, especially now that your Flutter Mane is off of the field if you're Angel. Pollen Puff targeted into that Tatsugiri, trying to get that last bit of HP, but is not able to go through that Protect, meaning at this point, Angel is going to have to send in Arcanine. Arcanine has the opportunity to go for an extreme speed into this Tatsugiri who protected last turn.
Yeah, that's true. It is only a 30% chance to get a double protect. We have definitely seen it in our heyday throughout history of VGC, so it is possible. But Carson trying to check, see how much longer Amoonguss is taunted for, because you know you don't have to worry about any muddy waters. Now that you're a Steel type on Flutter Mane as well, that's also not the position that Carson wants to find himself in against an Arcanine that's hit it with a Flare Blitz after it knocked out Tatsugiri.
Yeah, that extreme speed easily enough to take out the last smidge of HP remaining on that Tatsugiri. Flutter Mane going for this Shadow Ball once again, just trying to do that big damage. It's not enough to get the knockout, however, and another Pollen Puff means that you can go for something, like you said, like that Flare Blitz, that super effective damage on that next turn.
No crit from the Shadow Ball. That's what I was looking for on that turn. That could have been a way for Carson to come back in, because if he got the crit KO onto Arcanine, that Pollen Puff would not have been able to heal its teammate up there, and then you'd be able to start targeting down Amoonguss, but no crit again.
Yeah, no crit once again. It does take a bunch of damage, but enough with that Flare Blitz to get that knockout, especially when you know that that Flutter Mane is not holding the Focus Sash because its partner Pokemon Tatsugiri had it. You can go for those big attacks, and that is going to be game one in favor of Angel Miranda.
That is just perfect execution from Angel on how you face a Dondozo team. Like we said, this is not the first time he's seen an archetype like this, and the fact that it was Dragon Terra instead of Flying Terra, which helps you better against the Amoonguss matchup, made it worse for Carson. So obviously Carson is on the back foot here. What are the adjustments you can make? Remember the first turn of the game, which happened forever ago, 4 really fast Pokemon, Flutter Mane and Meowscarada for Carson, and then Flutter Mane Iron Bundle on Angel's side. Carson essentially sacrificed his Meowscarada for half of Iron Bundle's HP, which is not a fair exchange there. So are there some things like his Sylveon, for example, as we can see, it's one of those anti-grass or anti-steel Sylveon that have access to Terra Fire and Terra Blast, which can be really strong into the Amoonguss. Maybe that is an adjustment, as well as the safety goggles from Sylveon seems like a very smart addition on his team, trying to be defensive. And it's just a full anti-Amoonguss Pokemon at that point with Fire, Terra Blast, and safety goggles. But usually you dance with who brung you, and Carson brought Dondozo Tatsugiri to Orlando for a reason, so it definitely makes sense to keep them in the 4 he brings in game 2.
I think something that's really interesting as well, right, is Angel had multiple ways to handle Dondozo. I mentioned Perish Trap a bunch of times. I mentioned Perish Song. We didn't see it once, which is a great way of Angel to kind of recognize how he needs to handle that. But it means now that Carson knows if he brings Dondozo Tatsugiri, there are a couple of different ways that Angel knows how to work around it in this game. So if you bring that same combination, maybe you don't focus so hard on something that might try and go for Perish Song. Maybe you try and take out the other threats, try and focus down on that Arcanine, because that was your biggest problem in game 1. Whereas in this game, maybe you try and focus down a little bit and do some damage on other things, but it looks like Arcanine is the lead here with that Flutter Mane is going to be the change up for Angel, but is the Golden Go and Flutter Mane on the opposite side, and I like the Golden Go in this match.
Golden Go is a nice adjustment from Carson, which he did not bring in game 1. So, excuse me, I think it's really nice into Flutter Mane as well, since they're both ghost types, and if they do try to terrestrialize, you still have the super effective Make It Rains onto the fairy typing in Flutter Mane. So this is a lot more offensive pressure right away. You don't have the Sucker Punch or anything like that you had in the prior game, but if you stay a Steel type against Arcanine, you're somewhat asking to get Flare Blitzed as Golden Go, which is not a position that he really wants to be in. But by having the 2 Flutter Manes on the field right now and not the Iron Bundle to have Icy Wind, you're gonna have to worry about Carson's outspeeding yours.
Yeah, another Shadow Ball from Carson's Flutter Mane into the opposing one, whereas the Shadow Ball from Angel's Flutter Mane into Golden Go also does a good chunk of damage. Neither of those were enough to knock out, however. Flare Blitz into this Golden Go will take that last bit of HP, and that Arcanine is not gonna be taking a lot of recoil because its partner did most of the work.
Yeah, that recoil on 14 HP is really not that much. And Carson was just in a really bad spot because Golden Go's Terra typing is Steel. So even if you wanted to take less damage from the Shadow Ball, which obviously did so much, then the Flare Blitz would still actually be able to finish you off. And because Angel saw that it is choice specs Golden Go, means that's no protect. That is carte blanche to attack into that slot with both of your Pokemon without any repercussions.
Yeah, and I think at this point, right, Carson is going to pick something really interesting by bringing this Tatsugiri out onto the field without having that Dondozo. It gives him the option to possibly switch, but his Fluttermane has been faster every time. So you can still maybe take the knockout on the opposing Fluttermane and try and go for some big damage, possibly with your own Tatsugiri. It is actually going to be that Fluttermane switching out this turn as well. Not going to try and take some of that damage from the Fluttermane on Carson's side. Bringing in the Amoonguss. Amoonguss is probably a Pokemon that I don't think Carson wants to see here, but he is going for his own Terrestrialization. It's going to be the water typing on that Tatsugiri to boost the power of this Muddy Water.
Yeah, I like the adjustment. If Carson feels that Dondozo is not the singular way to win this set, and if you get some offense from Tatsugiri before it goes into the Dondozo strategy, that could be really nice against this fire type in Arcanine, excuse me.
Yeah, that Arcanine actually targeted into the Fluttermane who protected that turn, so no Flare Blitz damage here. Tatsugiri's Muddy Water is going to be boosted by that water typing. Does not miss on either of these Pokemon. Actually is enough to get the knockout on the Arcanine here, and that is a huge threat to your Dondozo, eliminated early.
Yeah, no more Intimidates to drop your attack. And we saw so many times Dondozo just barely missing KOs that because of those Intimidates from Arcanine proved why he was not able to get those. So now that Angel doesn't have Arcanine, you have, of course, used your Terra typing early, but this is one of those offensive Terrestrializations we talked about at the beginning of the show today. Getting that additional boost to your same type attack bonus because Tatsugiri was already a water type meant that Muddy Water did much more damage than it would have from some other Pokemon who would Terrestrialize into a water type. And it turned out it did just enough damage to take down the Arcanine.
Yeah, absolutely. And he has the opportunity to go for Taunt again like we saw in that last game. But getting the Taunt in before the Dondozo comes in could be really useful. Protect here from the Fluttermane on Angel's side. Shadow Ball from one Fluttermane into the other does not go through that Protect. Is still going to be able to allow for this Tatsugiri to Taunt into that Amoonguss to make sure that his own partner Dondozo can come in really safely if needed. Pollen Puff, though, from the Amoonguss into the Tatsugiri does not do a lot of damage, and you're feeling pretty comfy with that.
It doesn't do a lot of damage, but it does break the focus, excuse me, sash there on Tatsugiri. Getting a little choked up, getting excited about Tatsugiri. Because I like seeing this Pokemon that actually has a really strong stat spread, really strong, moves that it has access to, and it's not just chilling inside Dondozo. It's actually being effective and a strong member of the team for Carson. I like seeing the adjustments like this because it's really put Angel on the back foot, as this has really been a problem that Tatsugiri has on the field with that Terrestrialization.
Yeah, Amoonguss switching out here is going to bring in that Iron Bundle. Iron Bundle does have the opportunity to go for something like a Freeze Dry on those later turns. Is showing also that booster energy as well, going to boost that speed, become incredibly fast. Something that could even rival that Dondozo. As Shadow Ball, though, from Carson's Fluttermane into the Fluttermane on Angel's side is enough to get that knockout. I think at this point we can definitely confirm that that Fluttermane on Carson's side is faster as well. And Draco Meteor from the Tatsugiri actually gets missed there onto that Iron Bundle. One of those really tough things about not having a fully accurate move. Brings the Amoonguss back in, but Amoonguss can no longer switch in and out. You can taunt it again.
Maybe it's time to go back into Dondozo after you miss Draco like that. That's just how I would feel if I was the poor little Tatsugiri in this situation. But now you have the full health Amoonguss, which has not been taunted, so Carson would have to waste a turn essentially taunting the Amoonguss slot to help it out. And while you are taunting Amoonguss, Iron Bundle has access to Freeze Dry. Freeze Dry is an ice attack that is actually super effective into water Pokemon like Tatsugiri is here, so it's kind of an anti-water move. And now it's finally time for Angel to strike back with his Terra Pokemon.
Yeah, and another Terra Water here. This Terra Water Iron Bundle does, again, have really strong output with those same type attack bonuses, now getting boosted up to plus ×2 instead of 1.5. Tatsugiri is going to protect here as well. Looks like it's just trying to remain safe in the face of something like a Hydro Pump, but Hydro Pump does not target into that Tatsugiri. It targets down into the Fluttermane, and with even the boost, it is not enough to get the knockout. Perish Song goes onto the field, and that is exactly exactly what you need if you are trying to deal with 2 Pokemon left. Spore from the Amogus goes into that Protect on the Tatsugiri. That is putting Angel on a timer.
Even with the water boost or the Terra boost to its Hydro Pump, it's still not enough. That's what we meant by Flutter Mane being deceptively bulky. It's really not, but in its special defense, it actually is. That's why it's so confusing to hit the Flutter Manes. Even seeing the opposing Flutter Mane, you know, use Shadow Ball into it super effectively, and it still doesn't even knock it out. That just shows why it is such a prevalent Pokemon here in Series 2 in this format, along with being super fast. But the battle was canceled at that one because you did have the last 2 Pokemon there. I think Angel kind of understood what was going on.
Yeah, I think also as well, Angel might just want to kind of protect some little bit of information, especially maybe seeing how much damage one of the moves does onto his own Pokemon. Just knowing that he's on a timer, knowing that Dondozo's in the back possibly, waiting to come out and just kind of sweep up, get some big damage. By getting rid of that Arcanine early, Carson put himself in a great position to move around, even if he was possibly at the risk of getting knocked out by that Iron Bundle.
Okay, so call me crazy, but
okay,
thank you. Is there a world where Carson actually doesn't need to bring Dondozo in Game 3?
That's what I was thinking in Game 2, is that he brings the Sylveon and doesn't bring the Dondozo.
I was thinking Sylveon adjustment too, especially because we saw Golden Go was really not the answer, as it just got double targeted down and knocked out because it was slower than both Flutter Mane and Arcanine. A Fire Terra Sylveon is, with access to the, you know, it's Hyper Voice, it's a fairy type, into the spread damage there onto both sides, and also being a fire type to resist Flare Blitz from Arcanine. Like, I can see some versatility from it. I don't know if Carson or a Dondozo trainer is really comfortable not bringing their core strategy in a match, but it could definitely throw Angel for a loop if you're not expecting him to leave it in the back.
The problem being, though, you still have that Iron Bundle on the opposite side. That Iron Bundle to still put the threat on. It has that speed booster energy, so it is absolutely zooming across the field on its little ice skates there. It can do a lot of damage, especially onto a fire type. So if you bring it in, do you hold on to your Terra early and then maybe have the opportunity to go for something, to maybe go for that Terra later after taking care of the Iron Bundle?
However, Iron Bundle is a problem. However, Dondozo is either a water type or a dragon type while facing it if he decides to Terra. So it's not necessarily that Dondozo serves that much greater against the Iron Bundle. That's just one of the threats. That's why Iron Bundle is so strong. Obviously, Sylveon would perform worse if you terrestrialize into a fire type than Dondozo, especially with the boost to its stats thanks to Tatsugiri helping it out. But, you know, I can really see Carson kind of wavering back and forth on what the correct 4 Pokemon is in this matchup, because when you have Choice Specs Golden Go and Choice Banded Meowscarada, there's not a lot of protects to go around when your opponent has 2 really fast Pokemon in Flutter Mane and Iron Bundle.
Yeah, and I think something too that is kind of interesting, right, is the Amogus on the opposite side. The fact that you're not bringing Sylveon, like you mentioned, it has those safety goggles, so it almost feels like a more comfortable pick. But then if it is that something that you still want to kind of deal with? Do you see if Angel brings back that Shadow Tag that he used in Game 1 that was so effective that he left behind in Game 2? Does that then come in? However, Golden Go being a Ghost type can switch out due to Shadow Tag. So it doesn't have to terrestrialize in that first turn, can switch out, bring in something that may be able to handle that Gothitelle a little bit better.
Yeah, and both these trainers going down to the wire, waiting to the last second to lock in as they understand how important this is. Ending the lunch break on a high note, going 3-0 to start your day here in Orlando. One of these trainers is unfortunately going to be on the back foot, but it's going to come down to if the Dondozo strategy can work for Carson or if Angel has the answer yet again.
Looks like the exact same leads from that last game in the Flutter Mane and the Arcanine versus the Flutter Mane and the Golden Go. That Intimidate, once again, not really mattering onto either of these 2 special defense types. However, the Ghost typing and the Fire typing doing a lot of damage, like we saw, into the Golden Go on the opposite side. And also that booster energy for the speed on the Flutter Mane as well does show why it was faster.
Yeah, that's why it was outspeeding in the prior game and, you know, using its Shadow Ball to bring it down. Because of its booster energy has the additional boost to its speed stat. But you can't just do the same strategy, right? You can't just leave Golden Go out to dry for this turn and tank a Shadow Ball and a Flare Blitz on the turn. So let's see what Carson's adjustment is.
Yeah, protect on that Flutter Mane this turn, though. Shadow Ball once again into the Golden Go. Were you I don't know if you were expecting something else there. It still does enough damage. Does get that special defense drop as well. There was no switch. Another Flare Blitz. So an absolute repeat of last game. And even though Carson was able to take that game to win, it still feels like you're bringing a wasted Pokemon when it doesn't get to do anything.
So the same actions from Angel, and you can understand why, because it's such a simple play to make, because either Golden Go switches out and you get a lot of damage onto something that switches in, say the Dondozo or Tatsugiri, or it stays in and you get the KO again just like you did in the prior game. So now you do have the Tatsugiri switch in. Mind games, if Flutter Mane wants to switch out, Carson would be forfeiting the booster energy speed that it has right now for, if he wanted to do that later. So that would make Flutter Mane actually worse later on in the matchup. And because you knew from I believe it was game 1 when Shadow Ball did not knock out Angel's Flutter Mane, that turn where you protected, you still wouldn't have been able to KO it anyway. So I'm just, wondering what the Golden Go, unless he just wanted to just waste the slot and force Angel to really focus down something. But then the protect means that the Flutter Mane really didn't accomplish anything either. For example, that Shadow Ball could have been the second Shadow Ball into that slot.
Correct, and that would have been enough to knock out. However, just one Shadow Ball, like you said, is not enough. Moonblast into the Dondozo does over 50%. Flare Blitz into the Flutter Mane brings it down to 1 HP there, and that is an invisible focus. Sash, I've been waiting all weekend to say that, and we got to say it pretty early. Earthquake, though, will knock yourself out, so it really doesn't matter all too much at the end of the day there. However, that Earthquake is enough to knock out that Flutter Mane, is not enough to knock out the Arcanine.
That was a flex from Carson's Flutter Mane, because it really did not have to stick around, because it was just going to get knocked out to Earthquake anyway. But it had to do it for the people, for the audience watching, saying, yeah, I can tank that hit perfectly at 1 HP. Now that Carson is down to his final 2 Pokemon in Dondozo and Tatsugiri, there's really no question marks on what is going to happen, and that gives Angel the advantage, knowing that these are the last 2 that you can bring Iron Bundle, who has access to Freeze Dry, to hit super effectively onto Dondozo as either a water type naturally, or if he wants to terrestrialize into the dragon type. So Angel's just in a really strong spot, and eventually, since he has the Pokemon advantage, you can switch Arcanine out to try to intimidate later on.
Yeah, and you have to assume it's that Amoonguss in the back, right? He's brought that in the other games. It was really, really important to the matchup that he had planned. If you swap out that Arcanine, bring in the Amoonguss, you can go for a Spore, you can go for a Rage Powder if you're not expecting the Earthquake on the opposite side. Allows you to maybe just be frustrating and annoying to that Dondozo. The Arcanine does switch out here, and it is actually going to send out, I believe, yeah, that Amoonguss there. So that Amoonguss is probably something that can go for Pollen Puffs if it wants to. It has a lot of opportunities here. There is a Terrestrialization, though, right out of the gate on this Dondozo. It is going to be the Dragon type. So Freeze Dry still going to do super effective damage here, but that Fire type Flare Blitz from that Arcanine is not.
Right, that would be the difference there. You can take a little bit less damage, but protect actually from Angel on this turn, not wanting to take an attack, and the Dondozo's Order Up does go into that protect, so you got Amoonguss in for free.
But you still get the speed boost, right? That's the interesting thing, because that Order Up boost goes even when protect is, when you go into a protect, you still have that boost to your speed. You're not, I don't think, as fast as that Iron Bundle yet, because it is that booster energy Quark Drive, but maybe one more of those and you might be there.
But unfortunately, the full health Amoonguss doesn't care either way, and you can just redirect any Order Ups. Obviously, you can't redirect Earthquakes away, but you can redirect an Order Up away from your Iron Bundle if you're on Angel's side and safely click Freeze Dry against this Dragon type. And Dondozo, you got to protect here. You got to really think out these next couple turns, because it's in a very dangerous spot, being threatened by Freeze Dry every turn.
Yeah, Freeze Dry, but no Rage Powder from that Amoonguss is the Spore. So a pretty obvious kind of play there, right? Going for the Protect this turn, you may just try and time out, see exactly what the game plan is, get some more leftover recovery, most importantly, so that you may be able to tank some of these hits a little bit better, may be able to do enough damage onto that Amoonguss.
And the only 2 attacks that Dondozo has are Order Up and Earthquake. You can either have the spread attack, but with 2 full HP Pokemon, it's not going to be enough. And Iron Bundle protecting again.
This is a pretty smart protect, right? Because this Order Up going into it, not going to do any damage. Your Iron Bundle is still safe. Amoonguss can go for a Spore, has not been targeted. You get the speed boost, but it does not really do much when you are put to sleep on that next turn and have at least 1 guaranteed turn of sleep where you can take a Freeze Dry from that Iron Bundle.
I'm not sure how much it would have mattered if Carson clicked substitute on that turn. Obviously, that would have been a huge flex because you were not getting targeted by Iron Bundle. You would have to call that he was protecting in that slot. But because you attacked into the protect, that let Amoonguss spore you for free, and he gets to switch out, and here comes another Intimidate, making it when you eventually do wake up, if you do, you're going to be doing even less damage with your attack.
Yeah, and I think this Arcanine, right, its only real job right now is to switch in and out. You can switch it out on that next turn, possibly. This Freeze Dry into that Dondozo does a good amount of damage. Even with all of those boosts, Dondozo's going to stay asleep for this turn. You've got, I think, at least one more Freeze Dry on there, and that should, I think, be enough to knock out that Dondozo. Going to leave that Tatsugiri, who already has a broken Focus Sash.
Yeah, the Tatsugiri is not going to be able to do as much in this game single-handedly as it performed for Carson in Game 2, and you can continue to shuffle these Intimidates by switching Arcanine and your full health in Amoonguss here. So Angel's just in a spot that, as long as Iron Bundle can eventually bring this Dondozo down, you can win this set.
Yeah, another Freeze Dry from this Iron Bundle into the Dondozo is enough to get that knockout. Like we said, Dondozo is going to faint here, spit up that Tatsugiri partner that it has. Tatsugiri is going to be the last lone warrior here on the field. Actually, was not a broken Focus Sash, if I am not mistaken, so I believe it is still actually having an opportunity to maybe try and get a few things done, but this Freeze Dry is not going to help.
Yeah, Freeze Dry is going to bring it down to 1. It's 4 times super effective anyway, so that's what the Focus Sash is needed there. But with Pollen Puff on Amoonguss' side, if there's no Muddy Water dropped, you can just get rid of this last HP remaining, and there it is.
Yeah, I was gonna say your end game here is Muddy Water, accuracy drop, miss, Muddy Water, Muddy Water. So at that point, that means that Angel is going to take this round, going to be moving 3-0 through that lunch break. Carson still 2-1. There is still a great chance for him to continue to play moving forward. Dondozo definitely kind of seeing both its ups and its downs in this match, Joe.
Yeah, I think that's just a really fun explanation or showcase of how Dondozo teams operate and the counters that you can use. Like, we never saw the Parish Song way of getting around Dondozo. Instead, he used more Iron Bundle offense and Amoonguss redirection and perfectly timed spores, things like that. You know, shout out to Angel's hat there. The 2015 World Championship was a really fun year. Angel was one of the best players in North America in 2015 by getting top 8 at U.S. Nationals that year. So he's trying to say, you know, 2015 was great, but 2023 is even better for Angel Miranda.
2015 was actually the very first tournament I ever went to. I took the train into Boston Worlds by myself, my first experience at in real life Pokemon event.
That was my first World Championships that I saw in person too.
Yeah, it's just an awesome experience to be able to kind of think back to those points, especially these players that have been playing for so long. A really great game plan by both of those trainers. I think you could see where the adjustments were made. Angel, I think, adjusted really well and also was not afraid of targeting into that Golden Go turn 1. He's like, I don't know what the shenanigans are, but I'm going to stick with what feels best.
Well, what was really huge for Angel in both of those games was that it was Choice Specs Golden Go, and thanks to open team sheets, you saw it did not have Protect. So there was really no drawback to double targeting in the Golden Go slot because, all right, let's walk it out. Either he goes to Terra Steel, so he's not weak to Shadow Ball, but then he's weak to Flare Blitz, or he doesn't Terra and he's weak to both, and you know that Golden Go Shadow Ball was not knocking out, or excuse me, the Flutter Mane Shadow Ball was not knocking out Angel's side, which is what we saw in the interaction in the prior game. So it was just like this, a very safe turn and safe lead out of Angel, and I just would have loved if Carson made an adjustment. As he learned in Game 1, Meowscarada was not the play in that set because of the Protean switching its Dark type meant you're weak to Moonblast, and then Game 2, Golden Go got one, or I didn't get one hit, got 2 hit, but got knocked out before it could even start playing the game. I would have liked to see what could have happened with either a Sylveon adjustment or just a different lead together that didn't have Golden Go.
Yeah, I think at that point Carson was really betting on a different adjustment from Angel. He was betting on that Gothitelle lead, I think.
Yeah,
I think that's what he really wanted to see, and not having that Gothitelle in the lead on Game 3 already set him back. It made, he had won with that same lead in Game 2, but Angel was not going to let a Game 2 repeat happen, I think, just based on how he had kind of played, even just with the manipulation of kind of the switches in and out with both the Arcanine and the Amoonguss at the end, and just putting so much pressure on the Dondozo in so many different ways. And I think that is why so many players really have to prep for their Dondozo matchup. You can't just bring one Pokemon and that's my Dondozo answer. That's it. I have one answer for Dondozo. That's not how it works. You need probably 2 to 3, maybe 4 if you're really, really, really cramming in an
but then
anti-Dondozo team.
You don't want to over-fixate on the Dondozo matchup, right? Because then if you're just super prepared for it, it's kind of like in TCG, if you're, let's say you're a Lugia deck and you're, I'm just really prepared for all these lightning decks that are going to come at me. I'm ready for that. And then you end up not facing those lightning decks ever, right? It's you can't really over-focus on one type of matchup. Try to have a well-rounded team. But Angel did show that he did have multiple outs against Dondozo teams that just unfortunately for Carson, just in that matchup made Angel's chances of winning significantly higher. So that was just a really fun display of VGC at the highest level from 2 of the top players in North America.
Yeah, and I think it was a really nice introduction as well to those Series 2 Pokemon, because we got those full 3 games, right? We saw the Flutter Mane, and like you said, its special defensive bulk is way higher than you would anticipate, right?
It's silly.
It's almost like, it is almost silly. And Flutter Mane can do a lot of different things. It can get that speed boost with that booster energy, which is nice, and then it can still attack. It can do these really strong special attacks that can do a lot of damage to the Pokemon on the opposite side. It does threaten bringing something like that Iron Hands, because then Iron Hands, if it doesn't have the opportunity to Terastallize, it can take a super effective attack there. I think it's really interesting as well, just because there are so many Pokemon. Iron Bundle was one that we saw. I think there was a lot of Pokemon on that team that we haven't really gotten to fully experience yet. So I'm glad that we got kind of the full spread of 3 games to take a look a little bit closer and dive into each of those.
And it does show the difference between having booster energy and not having booster energy, because it really changes those matchups on their head. It seems to happen a lot in Pokemon where one of the best answers to a Pokemon is itself. Like Flutter Mane beats Flutter Mane, and Iron Bundle Freeze Dry beats Iron Bundle. And so if you can have, because you have booster energy to activate your Quark Drive on Iron Bundle, something like that, you have the speed boost or activate your Photosynthesis on Flutter Mane, it can really give you an advantage over your opponent.
Absolutely. However, we are going to hop back over to the desk with Adam, where he has an interview prepared for us with your last round's winner, Angel Miranda.
Thank you very much, guys. Fantastic job, as always. I'm, of course, joined with our winner of Round 3, Part 2, Angel Miranda.
How you guys doing?
How did that game feel going for you? I mean, going Game 3, hopefully didn't intrude your lunch break too much.
No, actually, I don't eat lunch during tournaments, so I just chilled around for a bit. But I was worried about that matchup because I knew what Carson was using. We all built team built together, and that matchup comes down to like reads and him calling plays, and then Game 3 came down to whether he called me going for the Flutter Mane turn 1 or not, and he didn't. I called it right, and I doubled into the Gold Dangle as he predicted.
It looked like it worked very well.
Yeah.
Felt like you were in the driving seat from there. You're talking about team building. You said obviously your team built with Carson. I've seen you've already been kind of memed on Twitter that you've just taken 5 of the top 12, or actually 5 of the top 6.
Yeah.
How did that team come to be?
Well, thinking about this format, and usually, you know me, I like using Pokemon that like a little stand out a little bit, have a little unique niche. But for this format, I felt like it was too wide open, and I just wanted to play Pokemon. I didn't want to stress out too much. I was like, play my game, play Pokemon, do my thing, and just use all the best Pokemon. And that's the best way to approach a tournament like that, where you just like want to relax and not stress too much. The best Pokemon give you the most options versus everything. And as long as I had options versus most things, I was comfortable.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely works, and we talk about it with team building, right? It's like, it never hurts to have just the best Pokemon available at your disposal.
The best for the reason.
Yeah, they're up there. Well, sometimes I kind of disagree. Some people get a little fixated on some bad Pokemon. Like, you know,
I feel it.
People got really into Murkrow for a while, and now we all learned our lesson, so we can move on. Obviously, fantastic performance in San Diego, making top cut there. We've got some changes coming into Series 2. What do we think? You know, do you think it's a complete mix-up, or do you think we're still going to see like the top people and the top teams?
So the format changed a lot because it gets way more offensive. Like the Paradox Pokemon bring way more offense to the format. It's harder to play more of a defensive game plan in this format. So before, like our San Diego team was pretty defensive, and it just doesn't work as well in this format. And you just gotta adapt, and that's why, well, you see me using the team I'm using.
Yeah, it seems like you guys have found what works. Speaking of adapting, I want to talk about something. You're obviously playing over the course of the season. I've seen you at multiple events, but I've seen you playing both games now, right? I've seen you playing TCG and VGC. I know you've done it before, but this year, kind of what's the driving force? Which one are you looking to lean in on, or how's that kind of decision going for you?
So I'm not sure which one I'm leaning on, but going into the season, I've always played both games. done some seasons where I only did TCG, some seasons where I only did VGC. And one thing that's always stuck out to me, I haven't qualified for TCG Worlds. I've been one game away, 15 points away multiple times. And it's always like, I want to qualify. I wouldn't be able to say I qualified for both games. And this year, I like both games. So I'm going to play both games. Which tournaments I play which at, I'm not sure. We'll cross that bridge when we get there. But I just like both games. But the main driving force is I like VGC a lot. That's my primary game. So I want to get an invite for that still. But also I want to qualify for TCG Worlds because it's something I haven't done, and I would really like to do it. And I'm in a good spot for that. I've already top 8 a TCG Regional, and I've top 16 San Diego. So if I keep pace, double invite's possible, but we'll see.
I mean, you could speed it up, just win this weekend, and then you'll be like over the line for VG.
Close, we'll be close, like 20 points away.
Okay, you have to go to one other event and, you know, get some points.
I am only playing VGC. I'm playing VGC for sure until EUIC. Once EUIC comes, I know for that tournament I'm playing TCG.
Oh, you're going to EUIC to play TCG?
Yes.
Oh, is there something about that format that has enticed you?
So EUIC will be the first post-rotation format for TCG.
Okay, yep.
And I like playing tournaments where it's the first tournament of the season or structure.
Yeah.
So it's the first rotation tournament, and I want to play it.
Well, thinking of that, obviously, you know, you've been playing VG a long time. I mean, we both have. You've been continuously playing while I stepped away to get on the desk. We do rotate series and such kind of every so often. This is something we didn't do. Like, let's take 2015, right? We just played 2015. How does that kind of make you feel as a team builder? Do you feel it rewards those players who can actually build more consistent teams? You know, how does that compare to, like, I guess, the history of VGC?
Yeah, it does reward good team builders. Good team builders, I'm not gonna say they love this format because I think most players are kind of stressed out about how quickly the format changes. I think 2 months is like way too soon for a format to develop. 4 months is usually like the sweet spot. But team builders, if you're a good team builder, you're like taking advantage of open metagames. And when you can take advantage of open metagames, it's, you know, it favors you. But yeah, it's different, but you gotta adapt. That's the big thing. Adapt to it, and gonna keep up. The big stress thing about series rotations being so often is you have to keep up with the game at every point. You can't. It's hard to take a break. And just come into it fresh. You have to be on your game every point.
Yeah, you have to watch everything, right? You have to do San Diego, you have to watch Liverpool, try and catch up on that, and then use that information for a format that we haven't played yet. It's certainly a little bit different as you come through it.
Even with the formats changing, it's still similar enough where you want to be able to take information from previous series.
Yeah, I mean, we kind of learned some lessons from Series 1, and then you bring them in Series 2. I like what you said about it being more offensive, though. I think being able to capitalize on those ideas just feels a lot better. I've been kind of asking around a little bit, and obviously we dumped the Paradox Pokemon into this format. That was the huge change. If there's one you had to pick that's going to have the best performance this weekend, which one are you backing? Obviously, you've got a bunch to choose from on your
all
team.
The good ones. I will say I think the most common one in the field is probably Iron Bundle. I think the most successful one will be Iron Hands.
Well, Iron Hands has highest usage.
Oh, it does? Okay.
Yeah, it's on over half of the teams in the room.
Caught me off guard. Well, that doesn't surprise me too much. I do think Iron Hands will be the most successful then.
Yeah.
I think people caught on pretty quickly that Iron Hands is probably one of the best Pokemon in the format. And there's so many different ways to run it. So it's probably going to be the most successful one.
Yeah, I mean, numerically it should be. But there's obviously people who try some of the more wild stuff. Iron Bundle is kind of like, I think it's just really, really good. It makes sense to put it on teams.
It's one of the few good water types.
I don't know if that's fair. I mean, there's
Don't say it. Oh, okay. Yeah.
Oh, you thought I was going to say the bad one?
Yeah, I don't like it. Yeah, you know what it is.
Let's talk about that combo, right? Obviously, that combo dominated Series 1. You just played against it in Series 2. It appears you're not a fan of it. Could you like elaborate on why?
Oh, you mean Palafin?
Oh no, Palafin's great.
Okay.
I love Palafin.
Okay. Which one do I dislike?
Are we talking Dondozo?
No, actually.
Oh, okay.
I don't mind Dondozo. Dondozo is every type to me because you always want to. You usually want to terror.
Yeah, you terror it. Okay.
The water type I don't like is Gastrodon. I think everyone knows.
Oh,
I don't
you
like
are a Gastrodon hater.
I'm a big Gastrodon hater.
Okay, I'm actually fully with you on this. I think it is.
We're cool.
It is absolutely like people lean on. As soon as other water types get popular, everyone just leans on Storm Drain.
Yep.
And people have been getting away with this for way too long.
It is the most overrated Pokemon in history.
Do you think there's any year historically where Gastrodon's been good?
Been good? No.
Yeah. Not a single
I understand it's won Worlds twice. Still, no. No.
Do you hate East or West more, or do you just hate them both equally?
Both equally.
Okay, good to know. Good to know. So if you play Angel, don't bring a Gastrodon.
Please don't.
Do you target it down? Because
No. I usually time I ignore it because it's not doing anything.
Storm Draining.
Yeah. So I'm doing nothing. Sits there.
Just don't throw water.
It's just
effect
he
at it.
sits there vibing.
Yeah. I thought you were a Dondozo here, and I was like.
No, I don't mind Dondozo.
And then I remember I did read this earlier. Actually, you were. Yeah, not a Gastrodon fan.
Not a Gastrodon fan.
Palafin though.
Palafin's very cool.
Yeah, Palafin's fun. I don't think it's as good as it was, but.
It's not. Yeah. It's still. I think the Pokemon itself is still as good as it is. The problem is Rain is not as good to enable it. But Palafin itself is still very good.
Yeah, I mean, Palapa taking some lumps coming into this tournament.
Yeah, it doesn't like the Iron Bundle sitting there.
Or Wild Charge.
Or Wild Charge, yeah.
That's decidedly not a great matchup for it.
Yeah.
But anyway, I'll let you go. I'll let you get back to the tournament. Obviously, 3-0 now. Got to be feeling good going into the rest of the day.
Yep.
Hopefully it works out well. I imagine we'll see you, at some later rounds. But before you go, I'll just let you know, don't tell anyone else I said this, but you are my favorite. So good luck in the rest of the rounds as we take a short break before we're back here for round 4.